Recording in progress. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'd like to welcome you to tonight's Planning Commission regarding the Northgate DEIR, the draft EIR report. We haven't been up here in a while, so it's kind of nice to be back. I'd like to call to order the San Rafael Planning Commission regular meeting of Tuesday, February 13th, 2024. Margaret, can you call roll, please?
Absolutely. Commissioner Haveman.
Here.
Commissioner Mercado.
Here.
Commissioner Prevatelli.
Here.
Commissioner Rodby.
Here.
Commissioner Samudzi.
Here.
Chair Sade.
Here.
Full attendance, Madam Chair.
Great. Now we'll move on to the approval or revision of the order of the agenda items. Staff has requested to revise the agenda to move the director's report to the beginning of the meeting, directly after public notification of the meeting procedures. The purpose of this change is to allow the city manager to introduce new staff here tonight. Does any member of the commission want to offer further revisions to the order of the agenda? I see none. So can I have a motion to adopt the revision?
Sorry. I move to adopt the revision to the agenda and move the director's report to the top.
I'll second.
Can you call roll, please?
Certainly. Commissioner Haveman.
Yes.
Commissioner Mercado.
Yes.
Commissioner Prevatelli.
Yes.
Commissioner Rodby.
Yes.
Commissioner Samudzi.
Yes.
Chair Sade.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Great. Public notification of meeting procedures. You're welcome to come to the meeting and provide public comment in person. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to provide public comment. When it's your turn to speak, state your name and share your address if you wish to do so. Community members may also watch online on 2 mediums, Zoom webinar or YouTube, or listen by phone as well. The links to those are in the agenda that are online. Now I'm going to ask if there are any non-agendized items from the public. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person and may be on anything within the subject matter of the jurisdiction of the body. Remarks on non-agenda items will be heard first. Remarks on agenda items will be heard at the time the item is discussed. Does anyone wish to speak? Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. We did move the director's report up at this point.
Oh, shoot.
If we would
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry about that.
That's what happens when your staff moves your agenda. I'm very sorry.
I know. That's fine.
I do know the city manager
Okay,
wanted
so-
to make remarks.
So we will change that order of the public remarks. Sorry about that, if you guys are standing for that. But we'll move on to the director's report.
Where's Christine? No.
Yeah.
Good evening, Commissioners. Christina Lilovich, your City Manager. Good evening to the community. I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce you to some new staff. I wanted the community to hear some new excitement that's happening at the City of San Rafael. So I'm going to start to my left. We've got an amazing team on this project. After Director Giudice took her new role up in Rohnert Park, we hired Laura Simpson right here to be our interim community development director. She has many, many years and is now a retired community development director and agreed to come to San Rafael to help us out during this period of time while we were doing a recruitment for the replacement. We have Heather Hines, who's a principal with M Group. She's been the consulting planner. I think you're familiar with her, but I just want to make sure everybody knows who's everybody's role on this great project. Margaret Kavanaugh Lynch has joined us as the new planning manager. She's been here a couple months-ish. Comes with incredible amount of experience. We're really lucky to have Margaret. So she's your new planning manager. To my right, we have Mary Wagner, who's with Burke Williams and Sorensen, legal counsel tonight. April Talley is a project director for Northgate. She's a dedicated full-time staff person in the community development department, specifically working on this project to move things along. She's doing a fantastic job. She comes to us with an affordable housing background, which is really, really helpful on this project. And then lastly, I think all of you know Director Hinkle. We just made an announcement that Micah has been promoted to be the new community development and economic development director. We're merging the two departments to move toward a development services type model. And you'll hear more about that in the coming months, but this is hot off the presses. I wanted to introduce Micah in his new role and really excited to hear from the community tonight. This is a really important milestone on this project. I want to thank the team for their time. I want to thank the community for their comments and all of you for your time tonight and hearing the community. So thank you so much. Thank you very much for letting me have an opportunity to introduce the team before you had your proceedings.
Thank you so much. Are there other items within the director's report? No?
No other
Okay.
reports. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. Okay, now we'll move on to non-agendized comments or from the public. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person and may be on anything within the subject matter jurisdiction of the body. Remarks on non-agendized items will be heard first. Remarks on agenda items will be heard at the time the item is discussed. Would anyone like to come up and provide comment?
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Steve Harris. I am a field representative for NorCal Carpenters Union, Local 35 here in Marin County. This organization is the reason who I am today. It has changed my life for the better over the years. It gave me a career to provide for my wife and my 3 children. I began this journey 36 years ago by enrolling into a carpenter's apprenticeship program, which has a duration of 4 years. I had the privilege to learn on the job and in the classroom, sitting with certified instructors throughout those 4 years, and meanwhile earning a livable wage to support my family and being debt-free from a student loan. Healthcare is something that was provided to me when I began this journey. Since my 3 children were born and have grown, I realized the importance of having health care and benefits along with earning a livable wage. I believe anyone with a family can agree that having health care is a necessity. I can personally speak about the triumphs and the struggles that all construction workers face daily. In conclusion, I ask the question, how can we better support the working class here in San Rafael? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to would anyone else like to provide public comment not on the agenda?
Good evening, Planning Commission. I'm right behind them. Okay. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. My name is Angela Adams, and I'm from the Northern Cal Carpenters Union, 751. And I have 17 years experience as a drywall and metal framer. I am now a union representative and for my colleagues. I advocate for implementing area labor standards and the use of signatory contractors and ensure high quality work for both residential and commercial projects. Additionally, we believe in prioritizing training programs and creating opportunities for the workforce. Access to affordable healthcare is essential for our well-being and the stability of our families. Without it, many will suffer needlessly. It is our responsibility to work together to provide this fundamental need. Our members work tirelessly and deserve proper health care benefits and fair wages. I urge the Planning Commission to support area labor standards and livable wages to secure a better future for the next generation to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else that'd like to provide comment not on the agenda? Okay. We'll move on to the consent calendar. The consent calendar allows the commission to take action without discussion on agenda items for which there are no persons present who wish to speak and no commissioner members who wish to discuss. Tonight, we have two items. One is the approval of the Planning Commission meeting minutes of October 10th, 2023. And the second item is review and accept the general plan, annual progress report, and housing element annual progress report for 2023. I think that was a typo. So do we have, commissioners, do we have any discussion on either of these two items? Okay. If not, I'd like to get a motion to approve both items.
Commissioner Haveman, I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Commissioner Mercado, I'll second that.
Okay, can we get roll call, please?
Commissioner Haveman,
Yes.
Commissioner Mercado,
Yes.
Commissioner Prevatelli,
Yes.
Commissioner Rodby,
Yes.
Commissioner Samuzzi,
Yes.
Chair Sade.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you. Now we move on to action items, the main event, everyone's here. The main item tonight is a public hearing to receive comments on the draft environmental impact report for the proposed Northgate Town Square project. The purpose of this hearing is to listen to all community members who have come here tonight to share their thoughts on the draft EIR. Looking around at the full chamber, I'm going to set a 2-minute per person limit because we want to hear from everyone here who came. Here are some additional rules for this evening. If the person who speaks before you says what you want to say, please feel free to just say, I agree with that person. You don't have to take 2 minutes, but you're welcome to do so. You cannot cede your time to someone else. And please try to limit your comments to the draft EIR document itself. There will be additional hearings later in the year on the project in the spring. If you're not sure if your comment is more project-based than DIR-based, please go ahead and share your thoughts. And it almost goes without saying, but please allow each of our community members to speak their mind. No, booing, shouting over anyone clapping. We support civic engagement here and want to hear from everyone in attendance. So really, I'm going to add to this script too as well that, tonight is a listening session. So comments on the draft EIR are required to be addressed in the final EIR. So all the many letters that we've received, any comments that we hear from you guys tonight will need to be addressed if they're applicable to the draft EIR. And with that, I think that's maybe goes without saying, but there's the impact of repeating stuff is not necessary. We have definitely received a lot of letters. So with that, I'd like staff to give a presentation to further frame tonight's topic and we begin talking. Margaret, please.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Again, Margaret Cabanel Lynch, your new, very happy to be here, Planning Manager. We're going to split this presentation into two sections, and the first section is going to be completed by Heather Hines, who is Principal with M Group.
Thank you, Margaret. Good evening. Is this catching my voice okay? Okay. Good evening. So we're very happy to be here tonight. This is a big milestone for the Northgate project, and we look forward to hearing all of the comments from the community and Planning Commission this evening. So next slide, please. Okay, there we go. So tonight, myself and Planning Manager Kavanaugh Lynch will be providing the staff report. The presentation largely follows the written staff report. And the purpose of tonight's meeting, as we're probably going to say multiple times this evening during this presentation, is to receive public comment on the draft EIR, the draft environmental impact report. So our overview will be relatively brief because we do want to allow every member of the community that would like to provide comment that opportunity this evening. Next slide. So to that point, we're here to receive public comment. That includes both oral and written comments, and we will be transcribing tonight's Planning Commission meeting. So we will be recording all of the oral comments for the record. So if you make an oral comment, you don't not necessarily need to follow up in written form. If you would like to also follow up with an email or in written form, that's yours to do. We are in a state required 45-day public comment period on the draft EIR. The city of San Rafael has extended that required 45-day public comment period to 60 days. So the end of that 60-day comment period is March 5th. And for clarification, and the chair mentioned this, comments received should be on the adequacy of the draft EIR and not necessarily the merits of the project. There will be other hearings. There have been previous hearings where the public has had an opportunity and will have an opportunity to make comments on the merits of the project itself. So as a very kind of brief overview, California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, is the state requirement for environmental review of all discretionary projects. The purpose of environmental review is to identify the significant impacts of a project against the baseline conditions. And of note, baseline condition does not necessarily mean existing conditions. For the Northgate project, specific to the Northgate project, the baseline condition is the operation of a fully leased mall. And the reason that is because that building is already there. The approvals from the city to build that building, the permitted uses allowed to occupy that are already there. So with no additional review, the mall could be in its current form leased to maximum capacity tomorrow, let's say. So the baseline that is being used to evaluate the impacts of the project is a fully leased existing mall. So I just kind of want to underscore that as, you know, the overarching discussion here. Purpose of the CEQA review, it's also to identify ways to mitigate or reduce the impacts of the project. So the mitigation measures in the EIR. It's also required to identify a range of reasonable alternatives to the project that still meet the basic project objectives, but reduce the impacts that have been identified. And then overall, CEQA is an informational statute. It is to inform the public and the decision makers of the environmental impacts of a project prior to a decision being made on the project. And just because a project might have an impact, it doesn't mean that the project can't be approved. It's important to identify them, identify ways to reduce it, and then for the decision makers to decide with all of that information. So kind of wanted to just kind of give that primer of the CEQA statute that we're working with. Next slide, please. There we go. Thank you. So as evidenced in this timeline, the environmental review process has actually been going on for some time. The publication of the notice of preparation, which is really kicking off the environmental review, happened in December of 2021. And there has been several comment periods, scoping session, but this is a very big milestone with release of the draft DIR on January 5th of 2024, and leading us to tonight's hearing to receive public comment on that draft EIR. As I mentioned, the 60-day public comment period extends to March 5th. The final environmental impact report will include response to all of the comments that are applicable to the environmental analysis, the draft EIR. And that final EIR will be brought forward for certification by the Planning Commission alongside the project entitlements. So the next time this environmental document comes forward for review will be alongside the project entitlements. And again, tonight's meeting is not the first public discussion of the Northgate project. There have been several hearings with the Planning Commission, with the Design Review Board leading up to this hearing. And although tonight's hearing is specifically to accept comments on the draft EIR, I am going to provide a little general background on the components of the project in the next couple slides. So the Northgate project is broken into two phases. The first phase being the 2025 master plan. And this first phase of the project involves demolition of over 300,000 square feet of existing retail on the Northgate site. It proposes construction of over 44,000 square feet of new retail on the site, as well as construction of 922 residential units on the site, including 96, which would be affordable to lower income households. Also in phase one, and this was in response to public comments and some of the previous discussions on this project, phase one includes construction of the town square, which is slightly over an acre in size at the center of the project, as well as about 13,000 square feet of additional amenity area adjacent, including a bike hub. This slide is showing the demolition. So the blue being the buildings, the existing buildings to remain, the red being the existing buildings that are proposed to be demolished as part of phase one. And I do want to note there's some pretty significant landmarks that remain in phase one. So the cinema remains, Macy's remains, Kohl's, and Rite Aid are all remaining as part of phase one. Also part of the phase one is our 4 residential parcels that are kind of brought to the forefront of this graphic. At the top, residential 1 is a 96 unit, all affordable multifamily project. Phase 2 or residential 2 are the townhomes. So this is the ownership component of the project, 100 townhomes. And then residential 3 and residential 4, 280 units and 446 units respectively, are market rate rental product with some activated uses on the ground floor. So this is a site plan showing phase one, the 2025 master plan, including both what's currently existing to remain, the residential addition of residential, and then you will see that town center in the pretty much smack dab in the middle of that site plan. You also have 2 new commercial pad buildings out along Las Galinas. They're in yellow. So that's an overall summary of the 2025 master plan, phase 1 of this project. Moving to phase 2, which is the 2040 vision plan. So this second phase is demolition of 339,000 square feet of existing retail. So as part of this second phase, you do have the demolition of both Macy's and Kohl's proposed. You also have elimination of about a 25,000 square foot open space area in front of the Kohl's to make way for residential 6 as part of this second phase. Construction of an additional 55,000 square feet of new retail and construction of an additional 500 residential units, including 51 affordable units. So again, this is the demolition plan showing the yellow are the additional buildings, existing buildings to be demolished as part of phase 2. You will notice that Rite Aid down there in the bottom right-hand corner remains, as well as the cinema. And this highlighting the 2 additional residential parcels, residential 5 and residential 6. Residential 5 is 251 market rate rental units. Residential 6 is 249 market rate rental units. But for both residential 5 and 6, 10% of the units would be inclusionary affordable units mixed within each of those parcels. You also have ground floor activation with some commercial uses on the ground floor of these two residential buildings. And this showing the fully proposed project, including both phase 1 and phase 2 in full build out. So I'm going to now hand over the presentation to Planning Manager Kavanaugh Lynch to present findings specific to the EIR discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Is my mic picking up enough? I want to make sure. Okay, great. So I'm going to pick up with the overview of the draft EIR findings. And they come into 4 different areas: significant and unavoidable impact, less than significant with mitigation, less than significant impact, and no impact. Of these, we're going to just skip over the no impact and talk a little bit more about the other categories. So the items shown on tonight's slide are the items that are either less than significant or less than significant with mitigation. And we're going to dive down into each of these topics a little bit deeper. Start out with the population, housing, and public services and utilities. Basically, this project build-out is within the scope of the general plan's projections. That means no new project service facilities would be required to specifically accommodate the increased population on the site in order to maintain acceptable performance standards. Service providers would accommodate increased staffing and facility needs through tax revenue and fee programs as necessary. Utility infrastructure and services can generally be accommodated through project demands, though existing wastewater trunk line would be required to be upsized for this project. And finally, the water supply assessment determined that adequate water supply is available for the project to build out. Okay, for the next item was the cultural and tribal resources. Under historic architectural resources, those impacts were less than significant. There were no historic buildings present on the site, so no mitigations were needed. For the tribal resources, in addition to standard mitigations you'll see in many types of EIRs, 2 additional measures came out of consultation with the local tribal representatives. They are a preparation of a monitoring plan and on-site monitoring required for ground disturbing activities to protect potential unidentified archaeological or tribal resources that could be encountered during construction, and an awareness training for the construction workers, which is a great addition because it's something that you need to be educated on when you're working at a construction site. The next item is geology and soils, which was less than significant with mitigations. Design measures include standard building measures, to address expansive soil conditions, design level geotechnical reports that are going to be required to address potential subsidence, settlement, differential settlement that could all occur within construction, excavation, or dewatering activities and the placement of new building loads, and training and accidental discovery measures in the event potential paleo resources are encountered. The next topic is hydrology and water quality. This was also found to be less than significant with mitigations. Measures include to prevent migration of potentially contaminated offsite groundwater and coordination with oversight agencies. Measures to ensure that Sonoma County considers the project in its groundwater management efforts. That's a collaboration. Obviously, we're in Marin County and there, but we need to collaborate with Sonoma County on stormwater, groundwater management. So it's a collaboration mitigation. And stormwater retention and conveyance systems are required to ensure that on-site flooding during the 100-year storm event does not occur. The next topic is hazards and hazardous materials, which was also found to be less than significant with mitigations. Measures are required to ensure that hazardous building materials are not released into the environment during demolition. And measures are required to ensure that subsurface soil and groundwater contamination is not released into the environment during construction or project operation. The next topic is transportation. That was also found to be less than significant with mitigations. And here are some of those key findings. Projects would generally result in fewer overall daily and peak hour trips compared to the baseline conditions. And again, Ms. Hines noted what the baseline conditions are for this project, which is a fully tenanted mall. No new traffic signals or off-site roadway improvements are required. Project would not conflict with policies or programs related to alternative modes of transportation. The project would result in an overall reduction in the city's average total vehicle miles traveled per service population. And I wanted to bring up a mitigation that the landscape maintenance measures would be required to make sure that we have adequate site distance and select intersections. Next topic is air quality, also found to be less than significant with mitigations. To do that, basic Bay Area Air Quality Management District construction period measures are required to be implemented to reduce the fugitive dust emissions. The acronym for Bay Area Air Quality Management District is BACMD, and you'll hear me refer to that going forward. Construction equipment will be required to achieve reductions in ozone precursor emissions or reactive organic gases and nitrogen oxides to below established BACMD thresholds. And construction equipment is required to achieve reductions in diesel particulate emissions to below established thresholds, to protect sensitive receptors. There are two topics identified in the draft DIR that are significant and unavoidable impacts. I want to kind of explain that a bit further. There are specific topics identified by the California Environmental Quality Act that are included in EIRs. In this case, both greenhouse gas emission impacts and noise impacts were found to be, the impacts that they're having are not mitigatable to the point of less than significant. That does not mean that we won't have many mitigations in place. You have to mitigate to the extent possible. But that said, these two items could not be mitigated to a point of less than significance. When you have these type of findings of something that's significant and unavoidable, that means the city council is going to have to adopt overriding considerations if they so choose. And what they would basically be doing is considering the project in whole. And it is up to them based on the testimony, based on the final impact report, based on all of the other information available to them, if they find that the project is an overall benefit to the community and therefore overriding considerations can be made. So that's a whole other layer to these two topics in particular. On the topic of greenhouse gas emissions, the project would meet most local, regional, and state objectives for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and would include electric vehicle parking and charging facilities consistent with the BACMD requirements. The project would reduce the natural gas emissions compared to the baseline conditions, but would not be consistent with BACMD's design requirements that require no new natural gas use. Those standards came out, I believe we decided was 2022. So they were a pretty recent addition. And they're region-wide. They're everything within the Bay Area Air Quality Management District basin. No new natural gas would be used for residential or recreational purposes, but it will be used for commercial kitchens. That is a significant and unavoidable project impact. Noise is the other item that comes out of this category. Measures would be required during construction to reduce the short-term increase in ambient noises to below the city's thresholds. So existing residents, the noise impacts during construction can be mitigated to less than significant. It's future residents of the project will be having has a potential for noise impacts during operation. So operation period, stationary source noise would exceed the city's land use compatibility thresholds for future on-site sensitive receptors. So to translate that, the people that move into this project will, even though we will work hard to identify mitigations to reduce noise, there are going to be events in the city square. And those events will be sustained noise capacity issues that will be louder than the city's thresholds are, which are 55 decibels for daytime operation. So when there's a special event in the town square, it's going to be louder than what the city standards would allow. That is a significant and unavoidable impact as well. Finally, I want to address quickly the project alternatives that are identified in the draft environmental impact report. The first one is a mandated alternative called no project. The characteristics are exactly what you expect. There is no modifications to the project site. There are no mitigations needed. It does not meet the project objectives, however. The reduced development is the next one is identified. That's also really phase one of the master plan that Ms. Hines went over. That includes the 501,941 square feet of commercial space and the 922 residential units. That has incremental decrease in the air quality, energy, greenhouse gas, and noise impacts due to the reduced construction and operation intensity, but the transportation noise impacts actually increase. That's due to all of the remaining commercial spaces staying there. So the Macy's and the Rite Aid and the things that would come out during phase two, I believe they come out during phase two, but all of the commercial uses left in phase one would actually add to the transportation noise associated if we went with the reduced development option. Finally, the third option was the reduced residential. And as you can see on the screen, that leaves you with 217,000 some odd square feet of commercial space and 1,359 residential units. That would have an incremental decrease in the air quality, energy, greenhouse gas, and noise impacts due to reduced operation intensity, and all the mitigation measures that are proposed in the full EIR would need to be included. Written comments on the draft EIR can be submitted, as Ms. Hines said, until Tuesday, March 5th, before 5 p.m. to April Talley, our project director, who is seated over across from me this evening. There is her email. Very happy to receive written comments right up until that date. Those written comments will be transposed into the final EIR along with responses to those. And I believe that comes up here, yeah. Along with responses to those questions or comments and any modifications we need to do to the final EIR to address those new comments if they weren't considered in the draft statement. To conclude, the recommendation of staff this evening is to accept the public comments of the public that has come here this evening to present their oral testimony, and direct staff to prepare a final environmental impact report inclusive of the comprehensive list of comments and any necessary revisions to the draft. We do have tables that we can show you if you want, but we wanted to not put you through those this evening. We wanted to leave plenty of time for the public who came this evening to present their comments. So this concludes the staff report, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that presentation. It was really helpful. So we are going to go on and get comments and questions from the commissioners, and we'll just go down the line. And I'll start with Commissioner Robbie.
Good evening. Thank you for the presentation. I just had a couple of comments after reading all of the letters that came in and as much as the EIR that I could. On the town square, the parking issues that were brought up, I was curious if it makes sense or if it's even probable to narrow the parking spaces around the town square so that additional room can be added for, let's say, a toddler playground or whatever. I think that I looked at our parking regulations and it says that we can have compact spaces at 8 feet up to a maximum 30%. So I don't even know if that makes any difference or not, but I wanted to mention that. On the reduced residential alternative, I had a question on building 1 in phase 1. So if we're not building the 96 low-income housing, does that mean that EAH would then not have that project and that concept would then not exist? Or so I had questions on that. And then on the gas, the commercial operations, I know that now there probably isn't really a good alternative, but are we looking at potential future modifications? So for instance, I believe it was one of the cities in East Bay, San Pablo, they actually put into an ordinance where they hardwired the new commercial restaurants so that in the future, because we will get there, where we'll have convection ovens or something that actually works for commercial restaurants, that they would be set up for that. I don't know if we can look at that or not, but I thought I would mention that. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Haveman, do you have any questions or comments?
Just two quick questions and a little bit of comment. One is with regarding the baseline. I mean, I understand why the baseline is selected, but it really doesn't provide much in the way of forewarning for the public of what's coming with the mall. The baseline of a fully functioning, healthy mall relative to this development. So if you could speak a little bit to the baseline, is that just standard CEQA practice written into CEQA law? Or where exactly does the baseline come from? And the other is with regard to runoff from a 100-year storm event. Can you speak a little bit to the definition of a 100-year storm event? Because I think that going forward, 100-year storm events are going to be much, much stronger than they are today. Those are my primary questions. Thank you.
Margaret, would you like to address the questions now? Is that appropriate? And then we can, because that may help the overall public comment period, I think.
Sure. I think that I would think that we're balancing the having time for everyone to make a comment versus making sure that we address any questions that the commissioners have that are easy or low-hanging fruit. So we could attempt to give brief answers. If it becomes complex, then we would, if it's related to the EAR, we would put that question in and the response would be in the final. And we could come back to the commissioners with those responses. If it's more entitlement based, we would bring those questions back at a future meeting. There will be several meetings on this project before the Planning Commission.
Absolutely. Okay,
So
thank you.
Do you want to?
Yeah, whatever you think is you're able to answer, reasonably right now, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, does anybody, there's a number of staff present. Does anyone have a question they heard that they thought they could have a quick response to?
I can jump in. The question about the town square, so that the increasing the size of the town square was something that did come up at the design review board. I know the applicant is looking at possibilities for that. So I don't have a specific answer that, yes, this is going to happen one way or the other, or in this way or that way. But it was a comment that came out of the design review board hearing and is something that the applicant team is evaluating.
Just to
Uh,
add on to that, actually,
yes.
just really quickly, this is a plan development. This is not so custom zoning, right? So if the development team can make a reasonable argument that they are they're bringing enough parking spaces for the uses that they have, and they have the information to back that up, they could do something different than what's in our established code. So that's just something else to consider.
In terms of the reduced residential alternative, my understanding is that yes, the EAH component would go away. And what the proposal is to expand that area. Residential 1 would be more townhomes, and then the inclusionary would be met within the market rate on the site. So that's one for that. In terms of the 100-year storm event, that is something that is defined by your federal emergency management, and it is something that gets updated periodically. So new modeling would happen, new applications would go into FEMA to define that as new forces are occurring and changing where those boundaries might be. So those are the few that I thought I'd take a chance with.
Appreciate that. And it's to that exact point too, and Commissioner Hivman's point, you can have a 100-year storm event every year. You can have 2, you can have 10. And we don't, we do know that the climate is changing, but it's certainly not, it used to mean it was rare. But now it's a measurement of intensity, I believe, more than anything else. Could we hardwire the commercial component? So I'm thinking of one of my favorite fast foods would be the woks found in China. It's a Panda Express, right? They are there are a number of commercial restaurants that are very they can't imagine not having natural gas for their wok in that case. But could we add a mitigation? We could definitely address that in the final EIR, that the future is coming and it will have less natural gas. So it's by every reach, that's a very well-timed comment, and especially if we can, but we will reach over to the city of San Pablo and see what they have written and see if we can make it make sense for this project. And the final one was baseline. So I know that we have a legal counsel here, but I'll start and let me know if I'm going too far off. It is a reasonable baseline to set for this project. It was a lot of dialogue that actually precedes my employment on how that exact baseline was set, but it is certainly within the legal parameters of the California Environmental Quality Act to say, what's there now if no other planning entitlements are granted, and what you have is a mall that fluctuates, right? Like a lot of our commercial centers in the whole country, honestly. So is it the only baseline possible? Probably not. Is it the one that they felt that was appropriate for this project and is reasonably something we could defend in discussions? Like, is it a reasonable opportunity if the tenants all decided to come back tomorrow? We would not say anything besides welcome back to San Rafael. So that's kind of how we got here. But it's certainly, it's a point of discussion. I think we hit the first 5 questions, so we can go on from there.
Yeah, that's great. And Commissioner Privatali.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a few questions. One is about the transportation analysis, and I understand that the baseline was, is for transportation that's expected or that would be expected with a fully leased mall and not the current condition. But my question is actually around sort of like the future condition of the intersections around Northgate. My understanding is that along Freitas and actually on the side of the freeway, there are going to be 3 traffic circles installed soon. And please correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm wrong about that, but that's my understanding. And I'm just wondering if the EIR, the final EIR, should take into account that plan. That's my first question. The next question, do you want to answer that now, or does anyone want to answer that now?
Certainly, we can start at it. I do not have that information. To be honest, I don't have a adequate answer to the question of the traffic circles in the transportation plan.
Okay.
But it is something that we will definitely have in the draft EIR and this comment addressed in the final. And in the meantime, we could bring it back to the Planning Commission as we see you again.
Okay, great. And then my next question is sort of along the same theme, really two themes, transportation and also work that's done not necessarily by Merlot Geyer, but by other jurisdictions like the city or Caltrans. And it's around the Maridale Road intersection and the multi-use and the potential multi-use path there. There is a multi-use path there, but there was a lot of there were a lot of comments around improving that intersection to facilitate not only the differences, I guess you would say, in transportation, but also to improve access to the SMART train. And I realize that the SMART train is not functioning in its expected state yet, but hopefully in the future it will. And I was just wondering if the city, could potentially commit to making some improvements in that intersection as part of this project. Not necessarily tonight, obviously, but potentially as part of the approval of the project.
I think that's a great item to come back to the Planning Commission with more information on. I would want to talk to our Director of Public Works and the City Manager's office to make sure we have a complete answer for you.
Great, I appreciate that. Thank you. The next is about the water and electrical infrastructure. And by the way, I love the idea of pre-wiring an interconnection with the capacity that would support induction cooking, which I think is what the future of things will be. So that's a great suggestion. My question is around the possibility that, we don't have sufficient utility infrastructure when, like over the course of time as the development happens. And I understand that a new wastewater trunk line is needed, and that makes sense to me. But could you sort of describe what would happen if for some reason the engineers and the planners did not properly account for the increase in demand? I imagine, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I imagine that the utilities would rise to the occasion and require additional infrastructure. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, I believe so. Yes, it's definitely, this is based on models, and models are based on data, right? So if it was found that additional utilities were necessary beyond the upgrade identified, that would be something that the utilities would work with the city and the property owner to bring forward.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought. And then finally, there were some comments around the possible insufficiency of recreation facilities at Northgate, at the location. Again, this is sort of like this is similar to what I was asking about with regard to, or analogous to, the Maridale Road intersection. Do you think that potentially we could, as a city, improve some of the recreational facilities like playgrounds and perhaps even like tennis courts or whatnot, or for instance, go into partnership with some of the schools in the area to make their facilities public as part of the approval process? I think that would help reduce the scarcity of those public recreational facilities.
Certainly, maybe not related to this project directly,
Mhm.
but when we're talking about private-public partnerships with schools and surrounding recreational facilities, there's a community center. I know that the city of San Rafael is always looking for ways to create more recreational opportunities and to share the time with them with any number of groups that we can. So we can bring it back in terms of the project. We can talk about if there's what type of additional recreational amenities might be on this, like in the open space that is proposed in the town square. In addition, I can make sure that I'm listening for other recreational opportunities that are being discussed, whether as part of the recreation department or in a capital improvement program, and make that like a part of the director's report. I would make sure Mr. Hinkle had a copy of what we have discovered in our time so that we can come back periodically and update the commission on that information.
Excellent. Great. Thank you very much. I think, yeah, I mean, that you probably picked up on a theme, and that is that it would be great if the environmental impact report and, the information that we convey, is not necessarily limited to the project boundary, but to the area around the project and how we can make the best use of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Haveman. Commissioner Mercado?
I think I'm going to reserve sort of comments and questions till the end. I would just say what jumped out at me, and it may not be appropriate yet for this hearing, is the statement of overriding considerations. There really wasn't much on that. I know it's kind of a factual balancing act that has to happen, but I would think that would be something that the public would be interested in. And just sort of reiterate, I appreciate everybody being here tonight. I think it's really critical to make your comments, but just a reminder that really tonight is the draft EIR and that it will come back again, correct?
Correct.
And all those statements will be addressed. There'll be other issues that will come up during the discussion. So again, I just appreciate what everybody's done so far because this has been pretty complicated.
Yeah, I'm going to also reserve comments and questions for after public discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. I had a couple questions. The first one is somewhat of a repeat of what's been said, but I think there's some additional things that I observed and that I have questions on. So page 11 of the staff report, our baseline assumes that we have a full mall. Is there a point in time where those conditions existed? Like, do we know if there was a date when the last time the mall was fully functioning? Because I think that'll help the public understand kind of where that baseline is coming from in real physical space. And then I'm not going to ask that question. I just think the actual impacts we may find that they're significant to transportation, air quality, greenhouse gas emissions, public service, recreation, utilities, and energy. And right now, we have no studies showing the actual impacts of the project that will allow Merlin Grier and the city to thoughtfully and strategically plan for the actual impacts of the development. And I think that's a real challenge because I think as a city, we want to do the right thing. And I think as a public, we want to be able to, know how to really be strategic and thoughtful about making sure that all those things are addressed. But without that information, we can't do that. And I didn't see that any mitigation measures were in place for long-term operational noise, even though it showed an impact. And my other question was the tables in section 4.112 note most measurements with a yes on general compliance. The general plan includes goals and suggestions and policies. So my question is, does a yes refer to compliance with both policies and goals or just policies? I can keep going, but I'll stop. I'll let you guys answer this.
I'm going to start with one concept that I think I'm really glad that you brought that up, Madam Chair. The California Environmental Quality Act is a legal construct, and it looks at certain specific things, land use, and we went over that in detail tonight. How this project fits into the community is not in and of itself a CEQA discussion, right? That's another discussion, and that's in the findings of the entitlements, which are the planning. Basically, that's the planning of it, the plan development, the density bonus, et cetera. And it's a decision of the city, the commission, and then the council on does the project fit with the needs of the community in that location. So it's going to bring a lot of new opportunities. It's going to bring a lot of new growth. It's going to revitalize a part of the Terralinda community that's not currently as utilized. It's going to have, it's going to bring items that people are not going to be pleased with. But that's in the end, the project on balance. Is this going to work for this community is a decision of staff will make a recommendation at that time. We certainly will, but the commission will think it over and deliberate and discuss and talk to the development team and talk to staff and talk about where you see the challenges are and where the opportunities are. And then you will make a recommendation, I believe, to the city council, and they'll do the same thing too. So it's beyond the scope of the Environmental Quality Act discussion because they measure a number of things. And that's why that document is so thick, right? But that second item that I think you're getting to is the work of the upcoming public hearings and the work that you've already done in the design review board meetings and a discussion about the open space and a discussion about how many cars versus how much recreational opportunities. That's the kind of thing that will be the topics of the next upcoming hearings. So that's what I wanted to bring forward.
Okay, and that data, I guess we'll see and we'll look at the reports, but I mean, we need the data to be able to, be strategic. I think I will go ahead and reserve my comments or my other questions for the end of the meeting. I know everyone here has been here for a while tonight, and I'd like to give everyone an opportunity to speak and have us go home at maybe a not too unreasonable hour. So with that, I'd like to open the public hearing. Everyone will have 2 minutes to speak, and we'd love to get your name and if you're comfortable where you live so that we can have that on record. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Julie Case. I'm at 446 Nova Albion Way. My family's been in Terralinda since 1960, and that location, 446, 1972. My concerns for you regarding the environmental part about the traffic report that said it was fewer overall daily trips during the peak hours and stuff is erroneous. And I really need you to be aware that since the pandemic, there's been an uptake in Amazon, UPS, and FedEx trips that I don't think you're considering in that particular area. I live 5 houses up from the mall. I also am concerned about that you may not be aware of how much of the emissions, the gas emissions, they're not going to be accurate because you don't have a lot of the impact of the Terralinda High School students who not only drive very fast, but they accelerate on and off very quickly on Nova Albion and in that general vicinity, as well as parents who are dropping off their kids at about between 7:30 and 8:30. And I want to say the noise impact is a great impact because of the fact is that I can hear the music from my house during just the regular Coles band events and stuff like that. But most importantly, I really just want to encourage you to really look at this greenhouse event expectation about this baseline because I think it's totally erroneous and you really have to consider all the extra traffic and the kinds of cars that the kids are using right now because a lot of them, they like the go vroom vroom type of thing with and that affects the emissions. So some ideas to consider. Please come walk around. I'll invite you over to my house. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Phil Hallstein. I live on Del Ganado. First of all, I want to thank you guys for some great questions tonight. Good challenging of the DIR. I'm going to read a letter from Gloria Smith. So she's an attorney, and so this will be submitted at one point with decades of experience in CEQA and case law. Because I have less than 2 minutes, I'm going to read the conclusion. Neither CEQA nor existing case law supports the city's baseline assumption of full capacity. It's absurd that you're using a mall that's been deteriorating for years. EIR must evaluate the project's impacts as compared to the existing baseline values when the environmental review began. So draft EIR hides the real impacts that will occur when the project is operational, like substantial increase in traffic and air pollution that will affect both existing and future residents. The draft claims that CEQA allows it to use the reduced use that occurred during the pandemic without providing any authority for this approach. She's examined, or I have examined, I'm reading for Gloria, the city's assumption of the mall operating with all the stores fully functional and well attended as the baseline, and it's not appropriate in this instance. Unlike general baseline case law, the redevelopment of this alien mall presents a completely different situation. Here, the proposed project would demolish a decrepit mall and use the property for a massive mixed-use village that would bring more than 3,500 new residents for a community that is currently only having 10,000 residents. So in sum, this case law doesn't exist according to our attorney, according to me, Gloria, reading her letter. So thank you for listening tonight, and good luck with this big project. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Good evening. My name is Shirley Fisher. I'm a long-term resident of North San Rafael and a member of Responsible Growth in Marin. I want to start by saying I support mixed-use redevelopment of the mall with housing. I think it's the right thing, but there are a number of environmental impacts that need to be better mitigated. I want to talk to you about traffic. The baseline issue has come up, and my understanding is it is not based on any actual counts of what's going on at Northgate. It's based out of what is a typical manual full mall. This instance really makes no sense because not only is the existing traffic over the last, I've been here a long time, the existing traffic has never been in the last decade up to what you would have a full mall. And also we have now the new online trends of online retail that are changing the whole face of what traffic would be. I want to point out several things about the traffic studies. The DER traffic studies, the intersection of Highway 101 with Freitas, with Civic Center and Redwood Driveway is incorrectly counted as two intersections. I was around to 1990 when two traffic studies were done by the city and ourselves showing that this should be counted as one intersection and it has a much higher congestion level at that level. We have copies of those 1990 studies if you'd like to see them. The DIR traffic studies do not consider the effects of the three roundabouts. These are planned and are going to happen and very likely may be under construction at the same time as this project. Lastly, I would like to bring out the reduced residential option has another option, which is reducing the same number of units by lowering the 7 stories to 6 stories on residence 4. It would allow maintaining the EAH building with the same 96 units instead of dropping out 10 units. And it would also decrease shading and make a better entryway to the project. So we would like that alternative to be, that option for the alternative to be considered in the EIR. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Laura Silverman. I'm a 20-year resident of Terra Linda, and I'm also a member of Responsible Growth in Marin. These comments refer to the recreation chapter of the DEIR. I refer you to the detailed letter submitted by RGM, which elaborates the following points. The project does not provide 4 acres of new parkland per 100 residents as specified in GP 2040's park standards. The amount of space provided does not adequately meet the needs of the approximately 3,500 new residents, and the project will increase usage of local parks and recreation facilities. The requirement for the applicant to pay parkland dedication fees for the project's townhouses demonstrates that the project is not providing adequate park space for new residents. The DEIR doesn't consider the 2023 San Rafael Parks master plan that documents degraded conditions of nearby local parks. The EIR should include a mitigation measure that parkland dedication fees are applied to improvement of local park and recreation facilities accessible to new residents. The EIR should include an option for the town square to be enlarged by eliminating parking lot 6 in the center of the project. The 117 parking spaces in lot 6 can be relocated to the periphery in phase 1. In phase 2, the 117 parking spaces can be eliminated because the project exceeds parking requirements. The EIR should specify that the town square should include playground facilities for toddlers and preschoolers. The existing small toddler playground at Northgate should be replaced and augmented rather than eliminated. Finally, the 25,000 plus square feet of public open space near Coles in phase 1 should be preserved or relocated in phase 2. Creation of private open space inside new residential buildings in phase 2 cannot be considered equivalent to providing open space.
Thank you so much. I think the 2 minutes has lapsed, but we do have your letter. We've read it in detail and it will be addressed.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time.
Yeah, thank you for your thoughtful comments.
Hi, good evening. My name is David Smith. I'm a member of RGM and I live directly across the street from Northgate Mall. I'd like to talk to you about noise and why the noise analysis in the DER is severely flawed. The city and the DEIR agree that traffic is a major source of ambient noise, yet only one 15-minute long measurement of existing ambient sound was taken at 4 locations on the south and west sides of the mall between 2:30 and 4 p.m. on a Wednesday. The measured noise levels at 2 locations were above the limits established in the noise ordinance. The DEIR contends that because of that, neither construction noise nor increased traffic noise are restricted by those limits. I disagree with the finding and the data it's based on. The measurements were taken at one of the peak traffic periods when students were leaving Terralinda High School along Nova Albion and onto Northgate Drive. The noise study at the Nova Albion and Northgate Drive location counted 118 vehicles in the 15 minutes. I recently counted vehicles there on multiple days and times. The numbers varied from 37 vehicles in the morning to 87 in the early afternoon and 104 a little later. The average noise measurements were never above the city's noise limits and in the mornings were significantly below, which makes sense because there were far fewer vehicles. Construction noise will be ongoing from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday and 9 to 6 on Saturdays for at least 28 months. The DEIR acknowledges that noise levels at nearby residences will reach far above the city's noise limits. It claims that substantial decreases can commonly be achieved, a quote, using proposed mitigation methods. However, even if the reductions were actually achieved, the noise levels at the residential locations will be between 2 to 3.5 times the city's limits for residences. Better mitigation is needed, especially for the near neighbours. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Susan Coleman, and this evening I'd like to read some comments from Dr. Petra Pless. So for tonight, I'm going to be speaking as her. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. My name is Petra Pless. I'm a member of RGM and a 20-year resident of Terralinda. Our home is located less than 600 feet from Northgate Mall. I'm a technical expert for air quality with decades of experience in CEQA analyses for both project proponents and opponents. In my review, the draft EIR, I found that its analyses are profoundly flawed and as a result do not disclose the project's real impact on air quality. The draft EIR estimates baseline emissions of air pollutants based on the hypothetical assumption of the Northgate Mall operating at full capacity with all stores occupied and bustling with customers. As any resident of Terralinda, as well as the city knows, this has not been the case in many years, if not decades. Long before the COVID-19 pandemic hit, the mall has not been able to attract stores to fill its vacancies, let alone quality stores that would bring in enough customers for a humming mall. As a result of this hypothetical baseline assumption, the draft EIR finds that the proposed redevelopment in Northgate Mall would result in less than significant impacts on air quality. This finding represents a complete and utter failure to inform the public about the actual impacts of this massive development project will have on local and regional air quality and on the health of its local residents. Adding 3,500 plus units or plus new residents into a community of currently only 10,000 residents will substantially increase traffic compared to a barely functioning mall. This increase in traffic and other emissions will result in significant increase. The project sponsor does not have a vested right to air pollution simply because it holds a development agreement that would hypothetically allow it to operate the mall at full capacity when it has failed to do so for many years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Claire Hallenbeck. I'm a 45-year resident of San Rafael. First on this side, and for the last 30 years in Terra Linda. Been PTA president at Sun Valley and Davidson, and founding member of the West End Neighborhood Association, as well as a member now of RGM. And I'd just like to say that I have two ideas for you for mitigation of traffic and greenhouse gases, et cetera. Please, please, please eliminate the drive-through restaurants. They will bring traffic that comes and idles their cars and leaves. They will not give any benefit to the community, and idling cars will contribute. So this is an easy thing for you guys to do. And also, please, 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 as the Planning Commission did at the Loch Lomond development, require a grocery store such as Andy's Market that they have. It provides a center for the community, and it will reduce trips. People won't have to get in their cars to go get a carton of milk. So those are two easy things you can do that I think would really benefit the project. So thanks. And thanks for your service.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm Bill Carney with Sustainable San Rafael. Our letter requests that the final EIR include several additional mitigations and analyses to correct and reverse the draft EIR finding that Northgate's greenhouse gas impacts are, quote, unavoidable. To summarize, the primary mitigation we request is that the project eliminate the use of methane gas in its small number of commercial restaurants. According to the EIR, by complying with state and air district standards, this straightforward step would remove both greenhouse gas impacts that the report has deemed to be unavoidable. It appears to be the only way to meet those state goals. Non-polluting induction cooking is now used in many restaurants and preferred by many chefs for its precise control of heat. The developer's statement that this superior cooking technology is infeasible needs to be scrutinized and corrected in the final EIR. We also request additional analysis to back up the report's statement that the project would achieve, quote, net negative impact on greenhouse gases by replacing existing land uses with less intensive uses. Comparing baseline emissions to the total of both phases, which the chart doesn't do, of the project suggests that additional mitigations reducing about another 11,000 tons of emission would be needed. We request that the final EIR confirm that calculation and require sufficient mitigations to achieve net negative impact, including the use of renewable electricity, sequestration in trees and landscape, and a number of others that are in our letter. We appreciate the city's diligence and that of the developer to assure that Northgate becomes a model of climate responsible development. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Hi, Commissioners. I'm Pam Reeves, and I live in San Rafael, a short ways from the mall. And I do look forward to a wonderfully new mixed-use development. However, including artificial turf in this project is a poster child for false climate solution to support the petrochemical industry. It is not climate friendly. It becomes super hot in the sun. When plastic is exposed, that's what this is. It's a chemical fossil fuel. When it's exposed to UV light, it does break down into microplastics, into the watershed and into our bloodstreams. We all have heard how these microplastics are now in everybody's body.
When it rains, it'll just wash this off. Weeds will still need to grow through it and will need to be killed by chemicals. There are excellent alternatives for this everywhere. And I'd be happy to, I've researched it and I could share those with you. So the claim in CDP 4.10 and another one in policy C 3.9, these are just examples, saying that it's entirely consistent to include plastic artificial astroturf in this landscape is erroneous. It is not consistent. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Pam.
Good evening, and thank you for hearing our comments. I'm Bobby Riles. I live in Quail Hill, and I've been a resident for over 20 years. I'm also chairman of the Emergency Preparedness Committee and Safety at Quail Hill, and have been so for over 10 years. We're deeply concerned about the evacuation routes because we have only a 2-lane roads surrounding the mall. And I would like to quote a letter from Janine Lara, who's here tonight, from Terra Linda. She says, evacuation routes and negatively impact emergency response times. In addition, she is deeply concerned that the project would delay emergency response times and obstruct safety evacuation routes. In case of natural disasters, fire or earthquake, due to the limited road network at the Northgate Mall and surrounding residential and commercial areas. The transportation impact study findings that the project would have a, quote, beneficial impact, unquote, on emergency response times, and she says, defies logic. And I totally agree with that. And I think almost all of us do. She's saying, see the transportation impact study, page 33. Without vastly improving the current road network, basic common sense clearly indicates that such a large population and vehicle increase in the condensed area with a limited road network would cause potentially dangerous and perhaps life-threatening conditions due to emergency response time delays and roads overwhelmed with vehicles if a sudden evacuation of the greater community were necessary. It could also cause enormous suffering for residents. As you know, there are 3 communities, Villa Marin, Drake Terrace, and Almavia, that are primarily senior citizens, and they need emergency vehicles like ambulances, and if there were ever fire necessary.
Your 2 minutes is up.
Thank you.
But,
Thank you.
if you haven't already submitted your comments, please submit them and they'll be addressed.
I'm through. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, my name's Alan Jones. I'm a resident of Villa Marin, which is just above the mall. And I'm so touched tonight to hear all of the work that's been done by the people from Responsible Growth Marin. Although our written statement was sort of negative about the whole project, I'm shifting gears and getting on board with a modified project according to their recommendations. I feel that makes a lot of sense. I agree and second the feeling that the starting point for this EIR is a bit of a joke. I haven't seen them all fully operational in 15 years. Let me just make another couple of remarks. I wonder if the developer couldn't be asked to contribute to the traffic situation surrounding the mall. It seems to me that these very large buildings will be creating a kind of wall and adding terrifically to the congestion on the surrounding roads. I should think that the developer should be asked to contribute that. Also, just one more remark. I think the sort of open space that's shown on the plan as little squares is a kind of a joke. Villa Marin, when it was built some 40 years ago, is completely surrounded by dedicated open space on the hillside. We actually have hawks and coyotes wandering all around, and I don't think they're going to cross the street anymore. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Commissioners. My name is Janet Shirley, and I live at San Rafael Meadows. And for those of you that don't know San Rafael Meadows, we are kind of wedged between Marydale and Los Ranchitos. So if we take Walter Place, which is a pedestrian space to get to the mall, we're just 2 blocks away from the mall. So we're really going to be impacted very much by this development. I feel that the air quality and greenhouse gas impacts of this development, which is huge, have been severely underestimated. I really feel you should go back to the drawing board and reconsider, because I think the traffic congestion is going to be horrendous. And we're really worried. Many of the neighbors of San Rafael Meadows are worried about the evacuation routes also. Los Ranchitos is, this 2-lane road, and if in the event of a natural disaster like an urban wildfire or an earthquake, where are the people going to go? Because also the people in Terra Linda going west are also going to have to use the same road. So it's good. It's very, very concerning for us. The project does not provide the additional 4 acres of park per 1,000 new residents as required by the city's general plan. The town square, as it's proposed right now, is just way too small. It needs to be enlarged. It's just too small for the type of development that's coming. I would like to propose a toddler playground be part of that town square. Please enlarge the town square. Please recommend that and include a toddler's playground. Also, I think one of the big concerns for many of us residents too of San Rafael Meadows is the 7-story residential number 4 that's going to face the cemetery. And it's going to be built out to the sidewalk. So we're very much concerned with that. We feel that 7th floor needs to be reduced.
Yeah.
And so I want to thank you for your time. There's a lot more I could say, but I know the time's limited here. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Colin, Terra Linda resident. Have a 27-year-old and a 3-year-old who's about to be going into, scary. We very much support the idea of responsible housing here in San Rafael. We also are really excited about the idea of renovating and revitalizing the mall, which is, we all know it is in dire need of that. Unfortunately, what we see is the implementation of this project is resulting, in our view, in a number of negative impacts that far overshadow the potential benefits to the new residents. And we were hoping that the environmental impact report would highlight these in more of a way than it does. It's very difficult to read that report and see the statement over and over of less than significant impact, given the fact that I and hundreds or thousands of others know empirical data, not modeled, evidence of what it means to drive around in that community for us. There's already congestion. There's already congestion, and we know that this, without beating a dead horse, the baseline that is based on unreal metrics, ergo the findings are not based in reality either. That's hard to stomach. The other thing I want to call out is that there is a real lack and a number of omissions in the environmental impact report that are they're troubling, not the least of which is there's no mention of the impact on our schools. There will be 333 new students, elementary and grade school age. Those schools are already at capacity. The only way to accommodate them is to build new facilities or expand. I don't see a plan or any money for that. So I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Gail Napel, 24-year Terra Linda resident. So I live, work, vote, pay taxes here in San Rafael and raise my family here in Terra Linda, close to the mall. A few things on the EIR, and I won't repeat what other people have said. FEMA flood maps are referenced. To date, FEMA has not incorporated climate change in its flood maps, but uses only historical data. Any assessments for climate change, including flooding, heat, drought, et cetera, should be based on the excellent science-based data available through the U.S. Climate Resilience Toolkit and California state resources such as CalAdapt. The San Rafael Climate Action Plan is only referenced in a couple of sections in the EIR, but as it contains items that pertain to all aspects of the EIR, it should be listed and referenced as a local regulatory framework in all categories. There are important things like rainwater catchment and green roofs, which are not addressed in the EIR at all, but they are in the San Rafael Climate Action Plan, which this city and its citizens worked very hard to put together and the city council passed. The EIR states that the wastewater line to the Los Colinas Valley Sanitary District wastewater treatment plant, say that's 5 times fast, must be enlarged to accommodate the project. The EIR should assess the long-term viability of that treatment plant, as it is vulnerable to sea level rise and may need to be relocated within the project's design service life. A mitigation might be to do on-site black water treatment, but that is an issue with utilities. Thank you, Commissioner Previtali, that should be addressed. The EIR also states that the design is planned for net zero energy. This is a code requirement, net zero energy for residential buildings. That means that there should be sufficient solar on those buildings to provide for the power that those buildings need to use. There is no reference to the actual amount of kilowatts that are shown in just generic plan on the roofs. And also the design is a generic, albeit very nice, design that does not address the solar exposure of each facade to its orientation. So we would request those things be addressed in the final EIR. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail.
Good evening, commissioners. I'm Keith Diaz. I'm with the Sheet Metal Workers, Local 104. I'm here also in conjunction with our mechanical trades. So we're here, we collectively represent 2,000 local families. These households are make a living as electricians, plumbers, sheet metal workers, sprinkler fitters. So as a former training coordinator for the apprenticeship, I see every day how our joint labor management state-approved apprenticeship programs create opportunities and true career pathways into the trades. That's what we do. So I ask the questions, should we build a project in a way that promotes the values of the community? Does the project promote sustainability? Does it help the San Rafael become more equitable? Does it create opportunities for working families? I ask you all these questions because I think hopefully we know the answers, and San Rafael is a very, very progressive city. So hopefully you'll take my concerns into consideration. And that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, commissioners. Thanks for hearing all the comments today. My name is John McIntyre. I am lucky enough to serve the men and women of IBEW Local 551 as their business manager. That would be the electrical union for this area, for those that don't know. And we're also here talking about opportunity. Hear a lot of people here tonight talking about living here for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. I lived down here too, 30 years ago on Woodbine Avenue, and I don't remember the mall ever being slammed out there like that. So it's hard to see, you know, what the picture that was drawn, painted here tonight. But either way, you know, we're here about construction. That's what we're here about. If this mall is to be, if this is to be built, torn down and rebuilt, we would like you to think about building it with sustainable jobs. I don't hear anything about local hire here. You know, local hire, local sustainable jobs are not the same thing. Local hire is potentially a job for somebody that's going to have to go do another job or go work another 40 or 60 hours a week just to sustain their family. Local sustainable jobs mean I'm going to work 40 hours a week and I'll be able to sustain my family during that time. And it would be nice if these were built, if these homes were built, that if I was a worker on these homes, that I would be able to afford to buy one of these homes. We should be thinking about that too. Because potentially who's going to buy those homes are the kids and the grandkids of the people behind me. So if that's the case, then if I'm one of the folks behind me, I would like to know that my kids and my grandkids are going to live here so I could go see my kids and my grandkids and not have to get on a plane or maybe take a drive across the state to go see them, because that's where they're going to be able to afford to live. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, commissioners. My name is Ray Lorber. I'm the past president of Mont Marin San Rafael Park Neighborhood Association. And I have two topics this evening for you. Are you familiar with the North San Rafael Vision Plan? It was passed in 1997. And the plan does not incorporate what you are proposing this evening. As an example, one of the phrases in there says, a sense of belonging and hometown feeling where people know their neighbors. That's not what's being built here. Second thing is, this is all based upon legislature passing the RENA numbers. And there's this massive number in San Rafael of new homes that have to be built. And Northgate Mall would be proposed to take care of that problem. The RENA numbers are false. They've been proven false. Department of Finance said they made a mistake. The numbers are not accurate. The auditor said, no, the numbers are wrong. So the project should be killed. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Frank Reardon, business agent for Local 38 Plumbers and Pipe Fitters and HVAC Mechanics. I'm here with my labor friends behind me. My members serve Marin County. They also serve San Francisco, Sonoma, Lake, and Mendocino counties, wherever the work takes them. We have a brilliant training facility right up north here in Santa Rosa. We have been training there since 1982. We turn out the highest trained plumbers and pipe fitters anywhere in the country. My ask of the developer, as well as the Planning Commission and City Council, is to push hard against allowing the developer contractor hiring contractors outside of our North Bay area. Please be a part of mandating prevailing wage on this project for all contractors working on it. This will go a long way in beginning to mend the damage done to our counties here in the North Bay and San Francisco due to the fallout from the pandemic, as we read daily in our news. This is a fantastic project and a very visible and prominent location. I look forward to working with the electeds to find a path that will provide sustainable, good-paying, middle-income jobs for men and women working on this project. Let's make this a high-road project that we can be proud of and can put some of our apprentices to work on that are your neighbors and live in your community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name, excuse me, my name is Lori Greider. I live about a block away from the project. I've raised my 3 kids here, and it seems like a huge impact on our lives and neighborhood. I love being able to see the mountains when I look across the mall from either side. I love having the wildlife, have open space, and I'm concerned about light pollution in addition to all these other things. I'm concerned about lead and asbestos and who knows what else in the demolition and all that dust that will go into our neighborhood. Our kids will walk through it, our dogs and the wildlife will all be impacted by that. I think the second stage approval should wait till the time comes and just go forth with the first half of the project. Because who knows what's going to be life is like in 20 years. The idea of 28 months with the destruction and construction, noise and pollution is unimaginable. The gridlock, there's already gridlock when there are accidents on the freeway. I think the park should be bigger. I think it should be a beautiful, quiet park, like a place you can relax, not be a loud park, shady and grassy. It's far too much that people have talked about the huge number of population being added into that space and the height. And there have been successful malls in Corte Madera, and I think ours is failing because of poor design and, you know, they could make it a beautiful place to come to, and they haven't done that. I want, you know, trees and fountains and quiet and, you know, a good community neighborhood place to live. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners, for hearing us. My name's Scott Norman, 25-year resident here in Terra Linda. I live in the cul-de-sac that abuts the guide dogs for the blind, about a block away. And I'll admit I had absolutely no intention of saying anything tonight. But after the incredibly intelligent comments I've heard, I think maybe there's one thing missing. I've also not studied the DEIR, but I'm willing to bet that dark sky compliance is probably not on there. Something that particularly irritates me. You know, having a neighbor with a light that every time you try to do something outside in the evening, it hits you, and it churns something in your stomach, you know. And when was the last time we saw anything more than the Big Dipper? You know, I hardly see any stars at all anymore. And I know it's a huge issue for me, and I know they have to balance safety with comfortability, you know, in darkness. So I would just ask that the EIR address, you know, downlighting and valences, what kind of lighting there is around the community, what sort of lighting residents are allowed to have on their buildings facing outward towards the existing residents right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is John Kay, longtime resident of San Rafael in the Terra Linda area. We know this project's going to go through in one form or the other. But what struck me is the 10% affordable housing. I mean, those houses around Terra Linda there, a starter house is close to $2 million now. I don't know why this entire project couldn't be affordable housing. We need it for people here, firemen, policemen, don't have to commute 50 miles to go to work. I mean, I just don't understand. The 10% number just baffles me why it's not 90% or 80%. Okay, thanks for hearing me out.
Thank you.
Thought I would come here to see what's going on. I am just a poor 61-year resident of Terra Linda. I'm one of the people that just mentioned that you have to travel to see your kids that grew up happily in Terra Linda. And I thought, you know, I don't want to speak because I know how the system works and I know what has to be done. And I know the money and the programs behind this and all the regulations coming from federal and state, county. But I just wanted to give you an emotional feel that you're missing something that you need to consider before you make some decisions. And one is that the greatest impact that's going to be felt here is going to be felt by the people that have lived in this near area forever. And I don't hear too much in their favor. We know that how stressed this area is already. I don't understand how 1,000 more residents in here with kids are going to crowd our school, take our water, and crowd the streets that are already stressed. It's not going to work. But, you know, do yourself a favor, come over and stand in front of the Terra Linda High School in the morning when the school starts or when the people get out, or try to get in and out of the neighborhood. It's impossible. But I know we need housing, but let's be honest with ourselves. This is not a development to increase a fallen mall. This is a housing deal. And we're trying to meet some numbers that are demanded by somebody from out of this area. So keep that in mind, that there's an emotional aspect to the people that have lived here and supported San Rafael for years. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments in the chamber? Okay, thank you everyone for coming and speaking tonight. The comments were really helpful. And I guess we'll end the public hearing. And I have a question because we were just going to accept the comments. But I know some commissioners have held some of their comments and questions till now. So I'd like to go down the line and get those before we get to go home. And I'll start with Commissioner Samuzzi.
Sure. I think I'll kind of speak to the areas that sort of are more relevant to my, I guess, professional expertise, because I think there were a lot of comments. I think there's a lot of conversation around the baseline scenario for the mall. And I think there's what I heard was a lot of misconception and misunderstanding of what the purpose of this specific meeting was. And again, I think this was emphasized many times, but again, I understand the emotional component. People come because they're pissed about the project, whatever. But this was specifically around environmental review. This discussion about the scenario of the mall is a financial feasibility. It's not really an environmental feasibility. The reason why this is an important distinction, right, is because what I heard frequently is that the mall is dying. So using an example of the mall at full capacity at baseline makes no sense. What we have to understand, though, is that we can't predict what's going to happen in 10, 15, 20 years with regards to capacity at the mall. The current economic trajectory may not repeat itself in 10 years, whatever, right? So the mall might be at full capacity in 15 years. So the point being is that there is no land use change or planning commission decision that would impact the mall being at full capacity. But there is a planning decision that would have an impact on the project that's being proposed. So we have to compare these projects at essentially full development to get a realistic sense of if this mall was at full capacity, how would that compare to this new project? Because again, just because the mall is dying right now, yeah, it may sound absurd, but for the purpose of the environmental review, we have to assume that we're comparing the mall at full capacity, right? I just want to clarify that point as to why it makes sense to use that particular baseline. Because again, we're not doing a financial feasibility here. In that case, it would make sense to compare sort of realistic trajectory, but this is an environmental review. So I just want to make sure that we understand the purpose of this meeting today and why we're here. So that's just kind of one point. I mean, I think there's another point that I think is valid that I heard a lot was just sort of like a theme of challenging to data gathering methodology. So as a data scientist, I'm fully on board with questioning the methodology of any study that you might see, looking at, the times of day that you're actually collecting data to make sure it actually does make sense and reflect what traffic patterns you're actually trying to assess. So I think the extent to which I think we saw and heard comments about that, I think it would be fair to just kind of examine the DEIR to make sure that we are in fact employing good faith methodology when we are capturing data about the traffic patterns. Now, I have no comment really about I think it's easy to talk about your anecdotal experience in traffic versus like the actual traffic study and vehicle miles traveled. And yeah, I think that those studies don't necessarily make intuitive sense. But again, I think I would encourage people to trust, as long as the methodology is clear, to trust the outcomes of those results and not to simply say, anecdotally, I see a lot of traffic here and therefore the study didn't accommodate that. Because dig into the study and identify a specific place where it didn't. I think that would be more useful feedback than to say I walked outside yesterday and there's lots of traffic, therefore the study is wrong. Because that's not apples to data. That's just sort of random whatever. So I think that's just one thing to keep in mind. I would also want maybe one further comment around the net zero requirements and sort of the conversation around that. I think that's a really easy excuse to downgrade projects, because I think the reality is that net zero is something, and I'm a clean energy developer and I develop large scale clean energy projects across Africa. So I'm not saying this from a pro fossil fuel perspective, but I think net zero stuff can easily be gamed by a lot of fraudulent RECs, credits, offsets and things like that. I don't necessarily know if it makes a lot of sense to put a ton of stock in the net zero or the negative net impact requirement, because again, I think if it's not something that can be achieved through the embodied carbon that's being used for the construction, it's all sort of carbon accounting, which can be fantasy anyway. I don't know what impact we have on sort of how much that gets weighed, but that would just be a comment for me, just from a clean energy sort of expertise perspective. So I guess those are all the comments that I would have just based on the public discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Smitsy.
Yeah, great comments. And thank you everybody for showing up. I think those were good. The way I view tonight is the public provides these questions, these comments. The way I view our role is we hear them and we want to make sure staff and the team, the applicant, address these in the next batch of the EIR. And so I try to make sure I'm hearing sort of a common theme or what are the big issues that came out. And this is just my perspective of what I heard and what I hope will be addressed in response to the public comment tonight. And I think as the chair said, if there's documents that are provided with that, please make sure they're submitted before the deadline date, just in case we're not hearing you correctly. 2 minutes goes fast. It's kind of nervous with the camera on. So just giving that chance to make sure staff has that. The first one, I'll echo what's been said already a few times, is the baseline. I think there's questions both the definition of the baseline as well as how it's applied. I think it'd be good to make sure we have that addressed so it's clear. Not murking the two is going to be needed. I think there needs to be sort of this is how CEQA looks at baseline, this is how the project did. I think that's been done, but just making sure that's addressed. The other one that I don't know how or where to go is sort of the visual impact. There's a lot of concerns with the height of the tower, an alternative of reducing that height. I know that's been addressed, but I think making sure there's some clarity in response to that, the shadowing, sort of that may tie into the emotional impact, which again, CEQA doesn't really get into emotions, but maybe that will help address some of those concerns or those sort of non-CEQA issues tied to the height, the visual impact. The other one that was really jumped out at me were the safety routes, the evacuation, the existing infrastructure, all of that. I think those are very strong statements. I know that has been analyzed and addressed, but making sure those comments are evaluated will be really critical. It seemed like there was a lot of sentiment behind that. And the one that I don't have my head totally wrapped around, but the park ratio per person, that seemed to be another concern on the existing side of the town square, sort of the community components of the development. Does it meet that ratio? Does it not? Making sure that we evaluate what that ratio is and that, as you said, apples and apples are being compared and there's not a misunderstanding. So those are sort of the main items. I appreciate all the comments.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Privatali?
Yeah, thank you. I'll try to be brief. One question is sort of a question on logistics and process. So there were requests from a number of union representatives that union labor and local labor be required. How would that go about being codified? Does anyone know? I don't think is it within the Planning Commission jurisdiction?
It would be within the council. Sorry. When the project entitlements come forward and they're in a development agreement, it could be included in that. That would be up to the council to recommend or to make that call on that.
Okay. Okay, thanks. And is that also the case, for instance, with regard to the 7 a.m. start time? That just sounds, for 28 months, that sounds pretty bad.
So the hours of construction are a citywide. I believe they're granted by ordinance. So if the city council or the planning commission could recommend, if you choose to support the project moving forward when it comes to you, you could recommend different hours of operation that you feel are more compatible with the community that this is adjacent to. I just do want to note that if you make the hours, 10 to 3.
That wouldn't happen.
Yeah, no. But the shorter you make the daily hours, the longer the project goes,
Oh, yeah.
right? So
No,
there's an unintended consequence that can come up, but you could stipulate a condition of approval that you would like to have the council bring into it.
Okay, yeah, I was thinking 8 a.m. probably. Anyway, okay. And then the last question is actually just similar to the other one. I frankly really like the idea of requiring a grocery store. Is that, again, a city council decision that would be based on our recommendation?
I'll start. So I know that was a condition in the, as referenced by the community member, and a project that was approved here in City of San Rafael. I'm sure that if you choose to support the project, you could add that as a condition of approval. The thing that makes me hesitate, and I'm looking at the director,
Sure.
current and elect in the room, is it's very hard to make a tenant stay in a lease. Right. So there is something that is beyond the city's reach. I think Andy's Market is beloved by that community over there, and I'm really glad it's going so successfully. I've visited it myself, but I don't know how you hold a private company in a lease if they want to leave. So that's,
Sure.
I just don't know how to address that.
Yeah, so you can't necessarily require a particular, I don't understand.
You have in the past. So there must be something to this, right? I'm certainly not going to deny, and not only.
We've been lucky.
It's been, so that might be true, but there's tenants and contracts and some of those are hard to backstop.
Yeah. And then finally, I'll just mention that, consistent with my remarks earlier, it would be great if the city could kind of like offer up some improvements around the area that, based on all the stuff we've been talking about, the traffic, the recreation, the parks, all that stuff, to sort of like ease the impact. Yeah.
Noted. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Commissioner Haveman?
I can't get off the baseline. I'm not sure I completely agree with you. It begs, in my view, the question of why we do an EIR. And I haven't done my research to find out exactly why we do EIRs, but I imagine it's to learn about dangers that are lurking, and to the extent possible, mitigate them. But I don't feel like I have learned very much about the dangers lurking in this project. And if you tell me that there is going to be another opportunity, another study that outside of the EIR accurately portrays what comes with this project, so that the Planning Commission and the City Council in particular can make really well-informed decisions, then I wouldn't be speaking. But I'm not sure that there is going to be an opportunity for that, and that deeply troubles me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for coming. I think it's really amazing how tight this community is, and you're very lucky to have each other. I did have one question that wasn't brought up, but SMART submitted their comments, and they were saying that because of the parking ratio, that it will affect future OBEG for funding. And I don't need an answer right now, but I would be curious as to what that means, what that impact is.
We will definitely be looking into that as part of the final EIR.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and finish my last comments. But I want to thank everyone for coming out and the really thoughtful comments and study of the EIR, as well as all the letters we received. They're really helpful, and I think it's going to help hopefully plan and make a better project out of this. I do agree that we need this project and we need the housing, but we need to make sure that it's done right and that the city's prepared to address the impact of the project. And, I was going to say pretty much what Commissioner Haveman said, so I won't say it again, regarding, real data. And I know maybe that's not, CEQA law allows for a baseline to be set, but it's not really useful to us. So hopefully, or in real time, I mean, it is useful to us because we know the impact if the mall was totally developed. I do have a few more comments. The impact on local parks is noted in 413.2, paragraph 3. The park would lessen the usage of existing parks. Does this statement take into consideration the increase in residential units compared to the existing mall? And then there's no data on recreation facilities that, is there no data on recreation facilities that can be included in the FEIR? So it'd be good to know, it's not just open space, but, actual recreation facility. The other comment I had was regarding the greenhouse gas impacts. I agree that Sustainable San Rafael's letter has merit, and I offer support of the response. I also think the letter from Responsible Coast Marin addresses important questions regarding recreation and public service. Some of the mitigation measures are valuable to consider, although I'd like to see an effort from LSA and Merlone Grier to offer solutions. The town square has been described by the developer as a retail amenity, not necessarily a park to support the needs of the new residents. And then I also am glad to hear that we're going to get a response to SMART. And that's all I have. Are we then on to?
If you could, I think we requesting a motion for
Oh, yeah.
the recommendation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I guess right now, what we would be doing is, voting to move on accepting the public comment. So if I can get a motion on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, Commissioner Mercado, make a motion to accept the public comments tonight.
Thank you.
Commissioner Smudzi, second.
Great. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Haveman,
Yes.
Commissioner Mercado,
Yes.
Commissioner Babatali,
Yes.
Commissioner Radby,
Yes.
Commissioner Samsudzi,
Yes.
Chair Sade.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And that is the end of the hearing. I want to thank everyone for their comments, and we appreciate your time and attention, and especially coming out tonight. So we've accepted the public comments, and I guess Commissioner Communication is next. So do any commissioners have communications to share?
I'm sorry, point of just clarification, Madam Chair. The motion, I believe, as reflected in the agenda, is to accept the comments on the DIR, but is it true that you intended also to direct staff to prepare a final environmental impact report inclusive of these responses and any necessary revisions?
I agree. I do. I'm sorry. I didn't read that, but I knew that was there.
I just wanted to make sure that's where I thought you were going.
Yeah. Do we need to do another vote, or are we good?
I don't think so. I think you're fine.
Okay.
Yes, wanted to make sure.
If anybody has any problems with it, let us know.
No, that was my
Revote.
motion. I just, all of that mumbled.
Oh,
yeah.
Apologize.
Thank you.
We'd like to see the responses for sure. Any commissioner communication tonight? Commissioner Prevatali?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I wanted to keep this out of the public comment, but there was an attempted abduction at Northgate Mall yesterday, and of a 14-year-old girl, and it resulted in a shelter in place alert for Terra Linda. So the reason I mentioned that is because I'd really like to see this project move along as quickly as possible, and mitigation measures be taken to ensure that that mall doesn't fall into a state of blight with a lot of crime. So that's my one communication.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else? Okay. With that, our meeting is adjourned.